Okay, so now that our theory portion is over, we're going to talk about actually playing these chords. So, when you're playing in a band, especially when you're playing blues music, there's certain chords that we learn as guitar players that often don't really work, at least as we're playing in a band context, especially when we're playing blues. So, I'm going to just take, an A chord. And typically, like the first chords that we learn on guitar is we learn our open chords. So, we know this A. It's great sounding chord. It's good. If we're going to be strumming, but that doesn't really work in a blues context. If you hear recordings, you don't hear when guys are playing. It's not as open. It's not as you don't have so many strings ringing out when you're playing with the bands. The next chords that we typically learn after that, though, are our bar chords. And if we take this A shape that we probably all know, we're not going to be playing full bar chords when we're playing a blues. It doesn't work. It doesn't sound correct. So what we need to do then is we need to start editing down, and we need to take our basic kind of concepts that we've put together and really just trying to get the most out of them, because that's how you can really play this music incredibly well. So what we can do is we can just take our different inversions of the major triad. Now, what are inversions? Well, what an inversion is we have, say, 3 notes in a given chord. Suppose we have, I'll just take a C chord because we've been working in the key of C. Now, the C chord has the C, E, and G in it. Just if we're talking, again, basic major triad. That. But to invert what an inversion means is that I am no longer going to be playing the C in the bass. I'm going to be playing a different note in the bass. And with triads, we have 2 inversions. We have the first inversion where the C is going to be on, or the E rather, the third is now going to be on the bottom. We're going to have our G and then the C on the top. So it sounds like, we go from. And then if we want to take our second inversion, we put the G on the bottom, and then we have our C and E on top. It sounds like this. Excuse me, to sort of play them all through, we go. Now, these are all various versions of C major. It's just the notes are outlined in different ways. So with this being said, we can learn these chords all up the guitar. Now, we have been working in C, of course, but I'm just going to, because I think it'll be easier for everyone to practice, is we're going to move to the key of A now, or we're just going to take an A major chord. So for this example, I'm going to run through all these different inversions of A major triad, but I'm going to play them up the neck. So we have this version, which we know from our open chord. So we have, and again, I'm playing just these 3 notes. I'm omitting the high E, and I'm omitting the bottom 2 strings. Why is that? Well, when you're playing in a band context, often the lower notes, specifically on like the A and the E strings, are often played by the bass player. That territory is already covered. And, generally you're going to be playing, especially with a band, like you're going to be playing, mostly on these top 4 strings. But we are going to be, I will show you the inversions of these triads on the top 3 strings. But for now, I'm just going to use the D, G, and B strings. So our first, we have, of course, our A major triad here. We have the E on the bottom. We have the A and the C sharp. So my finger's just barred here on the 2nd fret. Then we have our root position, which this shape we know, the A on the 7th fret, the C sharp on the 6th fret on the G string, and then of course we have on the 5th fret our E, our 5th, and then we have our C sharp in the bottom, our E, and then our A. Here, 11th fret on the D string, the 9th fret on the G string, and then the 10th fret on the B string. So if you reference the notes that that you can find in the description box, these are all different versions of A major, and we can play them all throughout the different areas of the guitar. So now we have like 3 different ways that we can just play this triad. Now again, if we wanted to take our major triad and make it minor, we know that all we have to do is take that major third, and we have to just bring it down 1 fret. So we have our A, C, and then our E. So this is our second inversion. I'm just again working from the bottom, the lower register of the guitar and moving up. So we have our second inversion, A minor. So we have our E, A, and C. Then we move it up, this bar chord form that we kind of know. We have our A, C, and E. So just a root position. And then we have our first inversion here of A minor, and that is C, E, and A. And if we want to make these triads diminished triads, all we have to do is lower that third. So here we have, that sounds great, doesn't it? We have our E flat, we have our A, and we have our C. So we will then take this up. Now this again, second inversion. If we want our root position, we have our A, C, and E flat. So we have A on the 7th fret on the D string, C on the G string 5th fret, and then our E flat 4th fret on the B string. And then of course we have first inversion up here, the C, E flat, and the A. There we go. So what we're going to do is now we're going to start to look at these triads on the top 3 strings. So again, I'm going to use just an A chord, and we have here the root position major. So we have A, C sharp, and the E. So both on the G and the B strings, we're fretting the 2nd frets and we're playing the E open. Then we have our first inversion. We have the C sharp in the bottom, and then we have the E and the A on fret number 6, 5, and 5. And then we have our second inversion, E on the bottom, A, C sharp. And then if we wanted to take this up an octave, I know I'm only just playing this because of our open string situation. This is kind of the shape that you would use for a major triad if you were fretting a note on the A string. So, here it would be 14th fret on the G string, 14th fret on the B string, and then 12th fret on the high E string. If we want to take these chords and make a minor, we lower that C sharp to a C. So we have our A on the 2nd fret G string, we have our C on the B string, and then we have our open E. Then we have just an easy one here, just a bar all across on the 5th fret, and then we have our second inversion here, where we have our E on the 9th fret of the G string, our A on the 10th fret of the B string, and then finally our C on the 8th fret of the high A string. Okay, now for a diminished triad. Now you know that we take, to get our diminished triad, we take our minor triad and we lower the fifth, but I can't necessarily lower an open string. So I'm gonna start this this example by starting on the first inversion, just because I don't have access to that open string anymore. So here it is. So we have our A diminished. We have our, that's how the chord sounds. We have our C, E flat, and A. So we have our C on the 5th fret of the G string, E flat, 4th fret of the B string, and then we have our root up on top, 5th flat of the high E string. Then we have our second inversion, which we have the E flat on the 8th fret of the G string on the bottom. We have our A on the 10th fret of the B string, and then we have our C, 8th fret of the high E string. Hit a bum note there, but it's all good. And then finally we have, it's kind of awkward shape for me with this guitar, but we have our root position, minor or diminished triad. So we have our A, our C, and our E flat. So we have our 14th fret on the G string, the 13th fret on the B string, and then we have that flat 5, the 11th fret on the high E, the E flat. So those are kind of how we can play these shapes on these different areas of the guitar. And in the next chapter of this workshop, I'm going to start to show you how we can start to combine and voice lead these various triads into one another.